Hi, my name is Madhuvanti Karthik. I'm 17 years old and I'm from Mumbai, India.
My name is Ishan Roy. I am 15 and I am from Mumbai.
I am Ayan Russell Saikia. I am 11 years old and I am a student of class 6.
My name is Anshuman. I am 18 years old and I study in DPS Nachara.
For this episode, we reached out to a bunch of young people and we asked them a few questions about AI. First, how would they describe it?
I would describe AI as a multifaceted tool that was originally created for tasks such as structuring, analyzing, and summarizing, but that has now grown to cater to many other needs as well.
Well, in my words, AI is an algorithm that takes in information that is fed to it, processes it, and is able to generate new information from it.
I see AI as a helpful tool, but it cannot be 100% trusted.
I would describe AI as the future. AI has a capability to think, reason, and learn. The more you talk to it, the more you use it, the better it gets.
We asked them what AI tools do they use. No surprises there.
ChatGPT, of course.
ChatGPT and Gemini.
ChatGPT and Gemini on a laptop and my parents' phone.
ChatGPT, Perplexity, Grok, and Google Gemini.
We asked them about use cases. For most of them, it was schoolwork.
For clarifying conceptual doubts or for solving questions.
For studies, for generic questions and script related things, for image generation.
If I'm curious, I ask AI general knowledge related questions.
I ask it about 5-6 questions every day on average. That varies from academics to health issues to personal issues.
Personal issues, huh? So we asked them if ChatGPT felt more like a friend.
I would say ChatGPT feels more like a tool to me more than it is a friend.
He is a smart friend in class who can give you answers.
If I had a question with physics that I was struggling with, I would ask ChatGPT, and even if I don't understand it still, I can ask ChatGPT 50 questions, I cannot ask a teacher 50 questions. They would get annoyed, they would get irritated because they're real human beings.
In some ways, yes, it has gotten quite close to being a friend-like figure for me, and it sometimes does feel like I can confide in ChatGPT.
But I don't really think it empathizes with me. Like, ChatGPT can give me the most comforting words. It can tell me everything that I would want to hear. That's where it starts feeling fake.
From the conversations with these kids, it was clear that there are some guardrails and checks at home and at school. Some of their teachers are careful about where they should use AI tools and where they shouldn't. But is that enough? Most of them are aware of the risks of AI overuse, but some aren't necessarily insulated from it.
ChatGPT and Gemini can tend to make mistakes. I remember a friend told me that his sister used ChatGPT for a test and she got many answers wrong.
When people use AI to do their work for them, there is a certain loss in thinking ability of that certain individual.
I think as helpful and beneficial AI is to education, healthcare, and many other things, it can equally be as destructive. There are so many unregulated AI models that have no limits, which means you can use them and you can tell them to do just about anything and they'll do that for you.
That last voice was of 18-year-old Anshuman. He's been extensively using AI for the last 4 years. But he also says,
I personally feel like I use AI way too much.
4 kids, all users of AI tools, for homework, for curiosity, for personal issues, and increasingly, as we saw with the 2 older ones, to confide in. These aren't really edge cases, they are the norm. Which brings us to the question this episode is really about. Why are we talking about AI and children? Because the data is hard to ignore. A year-long Brookings Institution study, drawing on interviews and consultations with 505 students, parents, teachers, and tech professionals across 50 countries, concluded that the risks of generative AI in children's education currently overshadow its benefits. With 65% of the students surveyed expressed concerns that their own over-reliance on AI would lead to cognitive decline. The University of Illinois researchers studying teens' use of generative AI found that they routinely use chatbots as therapy assistants and confidants, seeking emotional support without judgment, while parents had little to no idea that this was happening. A recent study found that nearly 1 in 5 high schoolers said that they or someone they knew has had a romantic relationship with an AI. And then there are the deaths. In 2024, 14-year-old Sewell Setzer III died by suicide in Florida after forming an intense emotional attachment to a Character.ai chatbot which engaged him in sexual foreplay and, when he expressed suicidal thoughts, never encouraged him to seek help from a real person. In April 2025, 16-year-old Adam Rain died by suicide, and when his parents opened his phone, they found months of conversations with ChatGPT, which his family says became his suicide coach, discouraging him from speaking to them and reportedly offering to write his suicide note. And then there is Tumblr Ridge. On February 10, 2026, this teenager killed 6 children and 2 adults at a school in British Columbia, Canada. And it later emerged that OpenAI had flagged and banned her ChatGPT account months earlier for interactions involving violent scenarios, but the company chose not to alert authorities. Now, I'm in no way generalizing these incidents, and they are very, very far from the children whom you heard in the beginning of the episode. But they are the foreseeable consequences of systems built for engagement, not necessarily care, and deployed on children without meaningful safeguards. According to a report called Rights AI, Children's Experiences of Generative Artificial Intelligence in India, teenagers in the country are rapidly adopting Gen AI but with uneven literacy and limited awareness of privacy and cognitive risks. So, what do we do? For this episode, I spoke to 2 leading researchers on children and digital media, Sonia Livingstone and Usha Raman, to understand what's really at stake, what the evidence shows, and what parents, schools, and policymakers can actually do. Is AI rewiring how children think and learn? How should parents and schools set limit without shutting out a technology? And what responsibilities do AI sellers and governments have? Listen on, it's Friday, the 27th of February. I'm Anirban Chaudhary. This is the Morning Brief. Hi Sonia, hi Usha, very warm welcome to the Morning Brief.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you, Anirban.
So we are discussing a topic which is very relevant, very critical, and really scary at the same time. As the father of an 8-year-old, I'm quite fascinated by the potential of AI for children if it's used in terms of learning, but also the scary contours if it goes beyond that, if it curbs their originality, their creativity, and of course, if it becomes sort of a mental health counselor for them, which is the role it's playing for so many youngsters. Now, let's begin on that note. Sonia, can you tell me about the risks that children face just through the use of AI?
I think we honestly have to say at this point that we don't know because it's so new. As researchers, we've only really just begun talking to children and young people about how they use AI and begun researching the risks. I think we began thinking especially about misinformation and disinformation, what the AI producers like to call hallucinations. So I think for all the kind of information and education purposes, AI can be brilliant, but when it goes wrong, it requires more digital literacy than most people have to kind of identify the problems. Something we've heard a lot from children in our research is the biases in AI, maybe not mistakes, but biases in its assumptions about gender or about race and ethnicity. And this is also problematic. And then even more recently, the way in which generative AI simulates human relationships means that it presents itself as a confidant, as an advisor, as a counselor, as a friend, even as a lover, in a way that is wholly new for everybody and very beguiling for children and young people.
All right. Usha, I mean, maybe it's for these reasons that Meta AI came up with a specific set of guardrails recently for teens in India. Can you add to it in terms of the Indian context? If you have spoken to Indian youngsters, are these the same kind of risks that sort of you have seen?
So I think in the Indian context, and as we saw in our conversations with children, there's a certain inevitability when it comes to adopting technology, and there's a widespread assumption.
Which is the scariest bit, even for
Yes,
employees,
absolutely.
even for,
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is scary at all levels. But I think because children, at the stage of life they're in, even before they're able to understand the world, understand relationships, there is this tool that is seamlessly integrated into their phones, into their browsers. And I think in the Indian context, there is no one AI, right? So the children who are particularly advantaged may have access to newer forms of an LLM that have the guardrails built in, but other children may not have access to more sophisticated versions of the same program.
Absolutely.
And so whether those guardrails actually are, work in a backdated fashion, we don't know. So I think the inevitability is a big issue. And I think contextually in India, we're seeing AI and we have seen social media and other sort of digital tools as a quick fix to long-standing, very entrenched problems of inequity. And I think that's a danger that we have to really resist and fight against.
Right. There's a lot to unpack there in both your answers. The inevitability and the fact that youngsters in India or similar countries in the global south perhaps don't all have access to the premium features of the AI versions, which obviously means that they offer weaker safeguard. But before that, I wanted to understand, in a hyper-competitive education system like India, where only productivity is often priced and people don't really look at how you've achieved that productivity, is GenAI quietly reshaping what learning even means? And are we sort of mistaking efficiency for education?
Well, I think this is an issue that we've, sort of hid under the carpet, so to speak, for a long time, right? So the emphasis on product over process and looking at education as a means to deliver market-ready individual, that only gets even more exacerbated in an AI-led kind of education future. So children have been schooled out of valuing process. So I think AI just offers one more quick fix to get a great product without doing the hard work.
Got it. If both of you are comfortable, would you mind giving me, specific examples without naming children of the interviews you've had?
Well, we found in our conversations, and I'm sure Sonia can add to this, across the global south, the 5 countries where we did speak to children, children are excited about the possibility, but I think they already begin to discern where it could lead if they depend too much on AI. So almost all of them use AI as a homework helper, ranging from Google Plus, simple search to answers, or to sort of add to things that the teacher has inadequately explained or where they didn't understand, all the way to doing it because it's easy, using ChatGPT or any other AI tool because it's easy. So that seems to be something that the children, they're aware of the dangers of it, but they feel like there's no alternative.
I was just looking through our report, and children from India are saying what they say in many countries. They love that they can start with a question and get an answer, and then they can kind of ask more questions and they can keep going. The AI doesn't get tired. It keeps answering. It's always kind of polite, but at the same time, they are listening out. Is it realistic? Is it trying to give them the answers that it thinks they want? And then they have, more subtle questions, which I find really interesting, about whether the answer is really theirs if the AI gave it to them, or have they really put in the work? if the AI, is that their creativity that it comes up with. And
These
then,
doubts are quite a thick silver lining, right?
yes,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it shows,
absolutely. Yeah.
so they're aware of the wider context and the wider implications. And yes, they're savvy, but of course they can still be scammed and they can still be misled. And that's where human education is so important.
So are teachers encouraging this, or is there an outright ban or filters? From my limited conversations, I felt there's nothing really firm yet.
I know that there's general confusion. I mean, I run a magazine for school teachers, and so we're often in conversation with teachers. And I think teachers are also at a loss because they do say don't use AI, but they know everybody's using it. And yeah, so there is, I think, this space for discussion that is ripe for discussion that we need to tap into.
In Britain, we've just started talking to teachers, and what's striking is how incredibly different the answers are. So we've been talking to teachers in schools which are embracing AI, which are teaching the children about it. And we've been in schools where they're saying no AI, no cognitive offloading, think for yourself, do your own research. AI is cheating.
That is a risk also, right? If you
Yeah.
learn in school that AI is cheating and then you go and look for a job where AI awareness is everything in the next 10 years, isn't that a disconnect?
It's a problem. I don't know if employers know what they want of their workforce in 10 years from now, which is when children will be off to get the job. But I think they clearly want people who understand, who have a critical knowledge of AI, who know when to rely on it and when not, and who are kind of thoughtful about its use. At least that's what I hope employers want. So teachers are getting trained fast, I think. And of course, they also learn from their pupils. But we do need to rethink the education system a bit.
There also needs to be a little more discernment in what we mean when we say children and, to further section this community, right? Because
Sure.
if we're going to talk about teens, a 13-year-old is different from a 16-year-old, is different from an 18-year-old. And I think the cognitive sort of impact of tools like Gen AI would be different at each of these stages. So I think we need to be really more granular in the way we approach embedding AI in tools that such children will use.
Absolutely. Okay, now I want to talk about my top 3 takeaways from Rights AI, the Rights AI report. One was that privacy awareness was low amongst children. The other was that English dominated usage, and that and the lack of access to which premium versions, which tell us that access to Gen AI itself is shaped by class, language, and of course device ownership gaps. The other and very interesting bit is that a lot of children that you interviewed imagined AI as public goods. So AI basically helping disabled learners and those needing personalized pacing, etc. I would love for you both to tell me if you could go to solutions, and when Sonia says that teachers are getting more and more aware, are they also spreading that awareness about privacy to pupils? And the other 2 points, of course, the class shaping usage of AI and how it's used and what access, and of course AI for public goods.
I just on the point about privacy, I think it is incredibly hard for anyone really to understand or to explain to children about privacy in the sense of commercial privacy. Children grow up understanding that privacy is what their parents know about them, what their friends, what they tell to human beings. The idea that everything is being kind of tracked, that their data is being taken by companies, on another continent and used in ways that can target advertising or be monetized across a data economy. This is super hard. And I think schools everywhere have resisted teaching children about the business model that drives tech. They've talked about safety, they've talked about kindness, not bullying, and so on. But the business model is, I think, what we really need to prioritize now. And I noticed that it's in the latest version of UNESCO's media and information literacy guidance that schools really must now kind of tackle the business model, because children very often imagine that big companies with big reputations to protect kind of operate in the public good. They're developing the tools to add to knowledge or to help them learn or to support children with disabilities or to kind of spread resources. They have sometimes quite a kind of benevolent vision of the commercial world. And to the extent that that isn't how big tech operates, it's really down to schools.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Very, very valid points.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think, in India, particularly, the situation is complicated, as it is probably in, every other context. In that big tech, AI, education, these all seem to have entered into an alliance, which I will stop short of calling unholy, but I have said it, which is that schools are pressured to adopt edtech models, which increasingly are going to integrate AI. And so the level of data capture is often happening at the management level. So the school management is making these decisions based on economic or productivity, logics, not necessarily on learning logics. And therefore, teachers don't seem to have a voice here. And therefore, children also are not always aware of how their data is being used and, what it's being captured
This is
for.
across countries in the global south, or are you talking about India specifically?
I mean, I know particularly about India, but I think,
Right.
Again, UNESCO's report on EdTech suggests that EdTech has not delivered the promise that it seemed to have set out a few years ago, and this is global. So I would think that there are shadows of this across the world.
Okay, the other 2 points about accessibility, class and language and device ownership, shaping access to Gen AI. On one side, I would call it a good thing because, if you don't have access to AI, it means that you're safe from its dangers as well. But then how do you prepare for the world that's coming and the inevitability of it?
Yeah, well, again, class shaping AI class shaping access to AI is, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a good thing, because it's a good thing if there is a choice and you then choose not to access.
Absolutely.
So that's a different scenario from the kind of access gap that might exist in India. So let's say a family has one mobile phone or one laptop, usually not laptop, as our recent surveys have shown that there are most internet access in India is through mobiles. And if there is a single mobile in the house, it is the guardrails that are now being put in place are imagining a single child using an interface. Whereas in India, it's going to be a parent's interface that a child may be accessing. So how do these guardrails operate there? And I know that OpenAI, for instance, is talking about AIs discerning the age of the child, but I'm not sure how that works in a shared device, a shared interface kind of environment.
For sure.
Yeah. So I think access is going to shape not only the bad use of AI, in which case it's a good thing, but also the good use of AI.
One question on design, which has to be part of this conversation and other conversations as well. Now, one huge flaw in the inbuilt design of a ChatGPT or whatever is its blanket affirmations, its confidence tricks, and what comes across as persuasive companionship. I mean, I have been tempted to ask ChatGPT if my dog really loves me. And it has given me a long answer of how it really does. And dogs don't understand love, but they understand bonding, blah, blah, blah. And I've been really happy. But of course, I am an adult, a 42-year-old adult, and I can filter those in my mind, but a child can't. So is this a primary design flaw, especially for children, that companies selling AI or making AI need to address?
I do. It's hard to identify what good looks like in relation to how AI addresses us. And I remember when Alexa first came out and everyone just issued instructions. Alexa, turn the lights on, do this, do that, play the music. And parents complained the children were learning this is how you speak to people, and they were beginning to issue orders to their parents and friends. And there was a move to say, make it more polite. So now it's been made more polite, sycophantic even, excessively polite and praising.
Yes.
And we complain again. And I think what we're really complaining about is not the kind of the way that AI is programmed to address us, but the fact that it simulates some kind of human interaction, and its whole motive, the whole business purpose is to make you forget that you're speaking to a machine. And of course, we're all, we are humanly programmed, if you like, to project empathy and understanding and a sense of kind of connection when we communicate. So it's really hard to know what the better design would be, except a constant reminder, this is a machine. This is not a person.
Yeah, I think we would do well to have a pop-up window that came, every so often saying, this is a machine. I think our whole conversation around AI seems to reflect a deeper panic, right? So with social media, we talked about dopamine fixes. And I think with AI, it's an engagement fix, right? Because what we've missed with social media is the sense we're talking to a human, we're just consuming. But here we do have that interaction element, which seems to be a different kind of hit. And
a dependency fix, if you will.
Yeah, maybe.
I think people are now talking about the changing notion of engagement from the attention economy to the attachment economy. And I think that is very interesting. It arrives at a moment when actually, I don't know so much in India. I know in Britain there's a loneliness crisis. There are lots of people kind of looking for relationships, looking for connection, looking for attachment. And AI is designed to meet the needs of whatever those needs might be.
Right. But Sonia, if I were to ask you, just try to pin you down to 3 design fixes for AI, especially where children are concerned, what would you tell me?
I think there should be age assurance so that the AI knows the age of the person it's talking to. I think for anyone under 18, there should not be. The commercial model must be regulated. I'm particularly concerned that OpenAI has announced it's going to start using advertising. I think there should just be no advertising for children. I think there is enough evidence that big tech doesn't make so much money out of children. We could say it's the best interest of the child that their access to the world of knowledge and learning should not be commercialized.
Understood. Let's talk about policy fixes, and policy fixes would start from conversations, because if it's fixed at the stage of youngsters, children, students, then obviously it would eventually go to their employers, etc. also. Talk to me about that. What do you think are the top 3, policy fixes that, countries, especially in the global south, maybe also in the global north and more developed countries, need to embrace?
If one policy fix should be a very clear idea of non-use cases. And I think this notion that AI needs to be generally introduced across the board in every facet of life needs to be thought through. So I think early childhood education, possibly all child education, these should be non-use cases in the cognitive sphere. And if there is a use case in the education scenario, it should be restricted to management and, institutional needs, not intellectual inputs, as Sonia said. So I think education policy needs to work very closely with tech policy to ensure that there are certain non-use cases, and only the government can do that, right? India, for instance, has still not signed on to, the general comment, which extends the provisions for the rights of the child to the digital environment. And I think that's telling, right? So Indian policy around child rights has always required long advocacy, many years of advocacy, and we don't have many years in the case of technologies like AI. So I think we need to move a little faster there.
One I would offer, one policy fix is that every AI product should have undergone a child rights impact assessment, just as it will have gone through a number of different kinds of impact assessments, whether meeting certain technical standards or security standards, but also child rights standards. And it just means that before the new product goes out or before it hits the market, transparent and accountable process has been gone through, which says, how could this be beneficial? How could it go wrong? How could it infringe children's rights? What's the worst case? I think, if we'd done that, we would not have nudification apps on the market. We would not have, various kinds of AI hallucinations and the production of illegal images and hate content and so forth. We should not let these things hit the market and become part of children's lives, everyone's lives, before they have been tested, just as, product testing is something We do for many, many kinds of products, but oddly not for tech.
Got it. Now, there is a huge fear that AI will create this divide between the global north and the global south. The one part will become AI makers, the others AI markets. And that, of course, ties into whatever you have said. If the rules that you spoke about are primarily written in countries, in regions like the US and Europe, do they have run the risk of not benefiting children in, say, India and Brazil, and they still end up being data sources and market resources rather than decision makers and beneficiaries of AI?
Well, I think that, children everywhere are at risk to different extents. I think technology is designed primarily in the West or with Western audiences in mind, and policies in the global South then often kowtow to the needs of big tech. So I think there's an issue there. But if you look at the interests of the child or the best interests of the child, I think at an abstract level, they're all the same for children all over the world. I think the only additional risk I would see is that children in the global South have fewer guardrails or fewer ways to advocate, or there's fewer avenues to advocate on behalf of children in the global South.
I think remedy is also an issue. I think if something does go wrong anywhere outside the US, probably, but certainly in the global South, then there's a real question, where can children go for help? And we might add the question of language as well. It's clear that AI operates in the world's dominant languages, and most children speak other languages. And so there's a real limit there. But I think on the kind of bigger geopolitical question that you ask, clearly AI expertise is leading in the US, but is huge in India and in China and perhaps in Europe. So there's the possibility of a different kind of balance of power emerging. And in fact, what I see is less global north, global south, and more those who are advocating for human rights, human in the loop, human-centered AI, and those who are saying profit first.
Okay, 2 final questions. From our conversation, it's very clear to me that one unambiguous must is personal guardrails. So there are a lot of parents who would be listening to this episode. Can you give me 2 preventives or guardrails for parents so that the harmful impact of AI doesn't reach their children?
Well, I think the first has to be use any technology for the first time with your child and make sure as a parent that you understand it. Never, as it were, just hand over the tech and then leave it down to the child and the phone what goes on.
Yeah, and just to add to that, with all other things that a child engages with, we're able to see the shape of that thing, right? When it comes to digital lives, unless the parent and the child are engaging with that interface together, at least in the initial stages, the parent doesn't really know what the inside of that thing is like. And that inside can be multiple, right? So I think there needs to be more conversation between parents and children, particularly adolescents, teens. And I think that's a culture of silence that exists, of course, all over the world. But I think cultures in India of upbringing, of conversation in families tends to be a little more hierarchical. So maybe that's something that needs to be factored in, that children come outside that sense of fear when talking about things they encounter online with their parents.
And perhaps the guardrails need to be strict irrespective of the demands in the outside world, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. I'd like to end on a positive note. What opportunities we've spoken about the ill effects and the evils and the harms, etc. But what opportunities in AI do you see for youngsters?
It's very striking when talking to children about AI, how their eyes light up and they start laughing and giggling and they have funny stories and they feel it to be, their technology, the technology of their generation. It's opening, it's exciting. It's going to be something they understand better than their parents and teachers, and it's going to be their future. And they regard it with a enthusiasm that I myself really struggle to follow, but they feel it's opening up a new world. and they are kind of enthusiastic to become the experts and the pioneers in that world, but they want the guardrails. They want to kind of know they are, there's always the safety is to enable children to explore. They don't want safety that keeps them away from the world. They want the safety that empowers them to go into the world. And I think that's what they're asking of the adults so that they can be the pioneers in this new world.
So I would just agree with that 100% because, I'm reminded of playground design, for instance, right? We didn't banish playgrounds, but we just made them safer and used better materials and so on. So I think we have lessons from older technologies of how the world has been made safer for children to be in. And I think that's what we need to do with AI as well.
Fantastic. On that hopeful note, thank you so much, Sonia, Usha, for joining us on the Morning Brief.
Thank you. Thank you, Anirban.
Well, good luck with your 8-year-old. And decide for yourself if your dog loves you.
Yes. Well, that's a lesson for me. As for the children in this episode, they were thoughtful, articulate, and already self-aware about the risks of AI. They know AI is not a friend. They know it can't really empathize. The question is whether the adults building these systems and the institutions meant to protect children are listening as carefully as these kids already are. That's it for today. You were listening to this episode on The Morning Brief. It was produced by me, sound designed by Rajas Nayak. A new episode of The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. Stay tuned.